cottage rental market has been on fire for the better part of a decade for Airbnb hosts. And the pandemic brought more attention to family and friends that wanted to spend more quality time by the water. These cottage owners have been making a killing with their investments by utilizing websites such as Airbnb, VRBO to rent out their property. But now, this is all about to change. My name's Kyle Duke. I've been selling real estate for the past 10 years, and I've had the privilege to help both buyers, sellers, and investors navigate the real estate market. If at any time you'd like to schedule a call with me, all of my information will be down below. Now let's get into the video. So for starters, most people know about Airbnb and VRBO, which is where you would go to schedule a vacation with your family or your friends, whether it's for a week, 2 weeks, or even a night. And it can get pretty expensive for just even 1 week. It can range anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. So that's why most people would try and go with a group where you can split that cost evenly, knocking down the price. And it's a pretty seamless process. You just go onto the website, log in, you would check out the cottages that are available, check out the reviews, and then start a conversation with the owner to see what dates are available and work for everyone. Now, this process isn't going to change at all, but what is going to change is the new rules that were implemented in Ontario requiring a short-term rental license. And I really think that it's going to have a big impact on these property owners using their cottages for rentals and how they're going to conduct business going forward. Now, this isn't targeted just to people renting out their cottages. It applies to people renting out their primary properties or their investment properties for a short period of time. But this video is strictly focusing on the cottage market. So what's been implemented is something called a short-term rental license. And basically what this means is if you are planning on renting out your property, your cottage, your primary home, or your investment property for 28 days or less, you need to have a short-term rental license or an STR. Now, it might sound easy to get this short-term rental license, but it really depends on where your cottage is located. And that's why it's really important to understand which municipality is enforcing what rules. But here are a few things to really keep in mind if you are going the cottage rental route and what you need to look for to obtain this rental license. The first one is going to be you're paying for a license fee, which can range anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a year. Number two is going to be the owner is required to schedule 2 inspections for the property and organized and paid for by the owner. So number three is it must be up to date with Ontario building codes, health and safety, and the fire code. So smoke detectors, fire alarms, etc. Number four is you must have designated parking spots for each bedroom that is in the cottage. Number five is any outbuildings or bunkies must be inspected and you must provide permits for those. And number six, which is a big one, is owning your shore road allowance. Now, in addition to these requirements needed to obtain an STR, there are a few other things that are in play. Owners of these cottages are going to have to pay an additional sales tax, which is going to be 13% whenever that cottage is sold. And you're also going to have to pay a MAT fee, which is a municipal accommodation tax. Now, each municipality, depending on where it is going to have different rules and regulations that apply to each cottage in its area. So if you are someone that is looking to buy a cottage for the purpose of renting it out as a rental property, make sure you're looking into these things a little bit further. I'm also going to link a website down below where it shows you the full list of where these STR licenses are required and what is required for each municipality. So within that list I just went over, I'm going to be highlighting the top 4 that I think are the most important and are going to have the biggest impact. So number 1 is going to be outbuildings and bunkies. So if you purchased this cottage 5 years ago and already had an existing bunkie and it was not done with a permit, it was just someone who built it by themselves, the municipality is making you either A, get a permit and inspect it to make sure that it's built correctly, or they're going to make you tear it down and build another one. And in addition to that, if you look at some cottages by the water, they used to be almost boat launches where they would store their boats on the inside. Well, now what we've seen over the last few years is people are starting to convert those into additional living spaces. So converting them into, 1 bed, 2 bed, additional space for people to rent out. Now, depending on which municipality you're focusing on here, some of them are actually requiring you to take those down and completely rebuilding, but also not allowing you to build them that close to the water. Number 2 is going to be the shore road allowance. So what that is it's a 66-foot strip of land between the banks or the lake or river, wherever you may be, or whatever your cottage is sitting on, that the municipality actually owns. When the surveyors of the Crown land back in the 19th century created these road allowances, they were using it for more commercial use, so transportation of goods and logging. And since these commercial uses are not being used anymore, the municipality still owns that shore road allowance. So again, depending on where your cottage is located, there's a very good chance that you do not own your shore road allowance, and some municipalities actually want you to own it to get the STR. So how do you figure out if you own this shore road allowance? And if you don't, how do you get it? There's a few ways of going about that is by contacting the municipality and see if you do own it. If you don't, what you can do is see if it's for sale through the municipality. If it's not, then the third option is to apply for a minor variance. Now that seems like a lot of steps to get to where you want to be to obtain this STR, but these are the new rules that they're implementing for people to actually run a cottage rental business. So number 3 is going to be additional sales tax. So whether you've owned this cottage for 50 years, 100 years, 1 year, and you've been renting it out this entire time, whenever the day comes that you choose to sell that property off, you're going to have to pay an additional 13%, which to me is absolutely crazy. And number 4 is going to be your MAT tax, which is going to be your municipal accommodation tax. And essentially what this means is you're going to be paying the municipality anywhere from 2 to 4% each quarter. That is just going to support the town itself through tourism and small businesses at the same time. These are things that cottage owners really never had to consider before when renting out their property for a short term. These are now new expenses that they're going to really have to factor in to see if it really makes sense for them going forward. If you're someone that's renting out your cottage now for only 4 to 6 weeks of the year to help cover your own expenses and pay some bills, this might now be a big deciding factor on whether it's worth it with all these new additional expenses. Now, what I think is going to be interesting is, do we see a lot of these properties that were previously on VRBO and Airbnb, are they removed from that website and people try to just rent it out themselves? Or are they still going to try and go through the process of getting this STR, pay these fees, go through all these inspections to make sure that their property is legit, but at the same time, are they going to up their prices? Are they going to go from $3,000 a week to $4,000 a week to cover their overhead? That I think will be very interesting to see. Now, I understand why this STR license was implemented. You know, if you're somebody that lives at your cottage full time, you're retired, and you're constantly having new groups of people to your neighbor's property, you know, throwing parties with loud music, I understand that can be a little bit annoying over a certain period of time. And if you do some reading online, the biggest thing that we're seeing is there's complaints from the neighbors, right? There's always this loud music. People are staying up super late. When if you're retired or you're living there full time, you don't want to deal with that. And I've even read some articles of neighboring properties complaining that, you know, these people that were renting their neighbor's cottage were walking onto their property and you know, fishing off their dock, which obviously is not okay. So think about the cottage owners that have, you know, successfully been renting out their cottage through these websites, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, or just personal family and friends. You've never had any complaints. You're in good relations with your neighbor. You know, you're not causing a ruckus within, you know, your little pocket of where your cottage is. And now to obtain that, your property only checks 1 out of the 6 boxes you need to check. Now, the choice they have to make now is, do you bear down and really follow these rules and get all these, you know, fees, inspections all paid for on your own dime, or do you take your investment property off the market? Now, let's talk about if you have a cottage on the rental market or you're renting it out by yourself and you do not have this STR. What does that mean? So what I've been reading online is that if you do not have this STR license and you choose to still rent out your property and you are caught by the municipality or the bylaws, you could be fined anywhere up to $100,000 a day. Now, I think that number is very rare, and obviously there's going to be some warnings for people that, you know, don't have this STR and are still choosing to rent it out. Or if you are somebody that does have this STR and you are getting these complaints, you're going to get docked with merit points, and you know, they get to a certain number where your license can either be suspended or completely revoked. And I truly believe that there's going to be a handful of people that will still choose not to go this STR route and get that license and still take the risk of renting it out to, you know, whoever they choose to, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, or just random people looking to get away for the spring and summer months. And personally, I don't really know how these municipalities are going to monitor these cottages that are being rented. I think the biggest reason why they're going to, get caught for renting out their property without having this STR is when you're going to get complaints from neighbors on either side, or even people across the water hearing loud music, calling the bylaws, and then showing up at your door. So there it is. If you're somebody that's looking to rent out your property, cottage, primary home, investment property, you do need to obtain this STR license if you are going to be renting it for 28 days or less. So if you are going to be doing that, make sure you're following those rules so you're not going to be getting hit with those big fines potentially. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.